it. I see. I have to leave at 12:30. I've got another phone call, so I'll be on my phone, and I won't be able to. I'll be able to see you, but you won't be able to see me.
Yeah. I'm operating on the phone myself. I still have to get a new computer.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's great to see you. Glad you're doing well.
No, thank you. How you doing yourself?
Hanging in there. Yeah. Just sheltering at home and we're working on behalf of some people who are pretty frightened by what's happening in the prisons with COVID.
Oh yeah. I'm still in contact with, unfortunately, my little cousin, he's been locked up since 91. But I mean, in one way or another, he was actually involved with what happened. So he has to face some accountability for his actions, although he might not have been the trigger man. But other friends of mine who are still on death row, or one in particular who's I think his death penalty was overturned, but he's looking at the possibility of getting a life sentence, if not a tender life. So yeah, they call me quite frequently and let me know how things are going in that institution. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
I'm gonna, let's see.
It's good to see you as well.
I think I was just able to put Laura on the call.
Okay.
And for all our attendees, we will be getting started in just a few minutes to allow for people to log on. So just give us a few minutes and we'll get started.
No problem.
I think Laura, I don't know, she might have muted herself, but.
I'm gonna mute too, and
you muted yourself, Jackie.
And I mean, I have the first question teed up to all panelists right there in the chat.
Perfect, and then that'll work perfectly. I think we'll give it 1 or 2 more minutes and we'll get started.
Okay.
Bro, is your TV on?
It's extremely low, so you shouldn't be able to hear it. Or can you hear it? Really?
Yeah.
It's on 6. Okay, it's 0 now. You tricked me, sis. You didn't tell me you were going to get dressed up.
I asked you what we're gonna wear.
I know. But you suggested that you were going to be a little more casual and wear
bottom down. Bottom down. I just have a shirt on. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like your attire. That one's even better. I should have just worn mine and we could have been matching.
Yeah. No.
That's so funny. Our Elena and I were literally having that conversation last night, and we were like, should we wear like dress shirts and like pajama bottoms or what?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of had that discussion as well. But we just kind of jokingly suggested wearing the Hill and Justice shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. We can't wait to hear about it. Should we get started, guys?
Sure.
We should.
Yeah.
Let's get it going.
All right. Amina, do you want to start us off?
Hold up.
We're gonna just give Haim a second.
We'll put more light.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I want to thank and welcome everyone who's able to make it out today for WASH IP's student chapter. WASH IP is the Washington Innocence Project. student chapter's annual exoneree panel, and we renamed it to the wrongly incarcerated panel. And we'll talk a little bit about why that renaming happened later. However, I'd love Elena to begin and introduce herself, and then we'll introduce our guests after that.
Okay.
So hi everybody, I'm Elena. I am the other half of the presidency, and we just want to first and foremost thank Heidi and Haim for being here today in the midst of COVID and everything that's going on, to come here and share your story to all of the law students. Everyone is so excited to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us today. We're so excited to get it started. So last year we had Donovan come to talk to us, and that was an amazing, impactful event. And I know that all of the up and coming law students, especially those interested in a career in public interest law, these kind of events are just so important for them to see you know, how you can come in as a lawyer and make a difference in the criminal justice system, and hear from the people who have been impacted by its harm, and kind of how we can move forward in a productive way. So thank you two so much for coming and talking to us today, and thank you for everyone else for being here.
You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome.
And as Elena said, her and I are the co-presidents, and it's really been a incredible year, and this was one of the panels that we were most looking forward to having in person, but you two made it possible for us to do it online, and that's in itself really amazing. So thank you guys. And well, without further ado, I'd love to just briefly introduce you guys, and then provide you both an opportunity to just tell us a little bit more about your story and how you're doing in your own words. So first, we have Haim Matin Sharif. He was just 19 years old when he was arrested for the murder of his 11-month-old daughter. He had been accused of abusing the child, and along with the coerced testimony and flawed medical testimony, he was convicted and sentenced to the death penalty, where he spent 29 years on death row. However, he was completely innocent and is innocent. In 2003, 24-year-old Heidi Goodwin, who was a mother of 3 at the time, was convicted of first-degree assault in connection with a 2002 incident that inflicted permanent brain damage on a 15-month-old. Heidi spent 10 years incarcerated, and she was too innocent. And with that understanding, I'd love to just open it up to you two to just tell us your stories. Haim, did you want to start off?
I'll defer to my sister first.
Perfect. Let's do that. Heidi, it's all you.
Yeah, so my name is Heidi Goodwin, and yes, I was convicted, I believe, at the age of 24. It's been 20 years, so things get a little bit foggy back then, but I did start serving time when I was 27, and all in all, I did 8.5 years for that, the crime that, you know, was a misdiagnosis. And so now I'm just trying to find purpose in what happened, and wanting to reach out to the law students and anyone I can to bring the awareness that, you know, that's my goal, that we need to be doing and working on to why is this happening? How do we stop it from happening? I'd like to say that the system needs to be restored, but I don't think that there's anything to restore. It's been built this way. And we need to actually dismantle it and reconstruct it to stop these types of things from happening. So,
hello everyone. My name is Haim Matin Sharif. On April 19th, 1988, my daughter Brittany Smith stopped breathing. I attempted to resuscitate her. Of course, I at that particular time didn't know CPR or anything of that matter, and I mean, essentially everything I did wrong, and my efforts of trying to revive her was wrong. As far as chest compressions and even panicking, I even panicked and started shaking her, trying to revive her, and tried to splash some water on her face. Paramedics were called later on. then they try to perform life-saving measures. She eventually was taken to the hospital that morning and subsequently declared dead, deceased. About 1 o'clock that same day, I was actually in the city jail for a previous traffic warrant when the police came and arrested me for her death. And that started a 29 years and 2 months odyssey of me being wrongfully convicted of not only abusing her, but her death as well. As the both of you, Elena and Amina, alluded to, the mother, Lovell B. McDowell, testifying against me and being coerced in doing so, that's kind of murky, being that when the grand jury indictment happened after my case felt weak during the preliminary hearing, that's when they decided to bring an indictment against both her and myself for abuse. And it was then afterwards that I basically told her, listen, I don't want you to get caught up in this situation where they take you away from my kids, knowing that that would destroy her and ultimately destroy me. Seeing her, being that we just lost our daughter and our son had just been born. Our son was born. I got arrested April 19th. Our son was born May 12th, prematurely.
Wow.
Yeah. So, given all of that, I didn't so much tell her to go ahead and testify, but like, listen, do what you have to do to make sure they don't take away our kids from you, and so on and so forth. But yeah, and I ended up on death row March 7th, 1989, during a long, protracted legal battle, which took 29 years, 29 plus years. Ultimately, I was released on June 7th, 2017, and introduced to my sister on the 12th of June that same year, Heidi. She's been instrumental in helping me make the transition from prison death row into life now. And I've been just like her, trying to find my purpose, studying criminal justice at this moment at Columbia, Lower Columbia College, and looking to get into being an advocate for prison reform, judicial reform, and so on and so forth, and try to bring about whatever changes that we can within the system. That, like my sister said, it needs to be torn down and reconstructed.
Just going off of that, I'd love to hear what you both think was if there was one or two main reasons why you were wrongly incarcerated, something that the lawyers did, the judges did, the medical testimony, etc. In your opinion, what was the most damaging and wrong part about that?
Sis, go first.
I think specifically in my case, I remember Kelly Canary and Heather Kirkwood coming to see me inside, and I remember them saying, like, out of all of the doctors in the nation that I could have had testifying against me, that I absolutely received like the worst ones. This specific diagnosis, which we now know is a misdiagnosis, it's an agenda. I have sat with Dr. John Pluckett, who, rest in peace, has passed away, and Dr. Wayne Squire from Oxford, and other doctors in the US who, Wayne Squire has had her license taken away because doctors are speaking out about the fact that this is a faux science. It's not structurally sound, and it's costing people their lives. And yet this agenda is an organization. They receive grants, they receive funding, and we can say now that it's being debunked, but people are still being convicted on this science.
Mm-hmm.
When I had my daughter 2 years ago, you know, I'm forced to sit there in the hospital. This is every mother, if you know, I don't know when it started, but if you're a parent, you know, you have to sit there now and you have a checklist of all of these videos you have to watch and things you have to be educated about before you leave the hospital with your baby. And that includes this shaken baby syndrome agenda. And so, you know, if this science is legitimately debunked, they lose funding, they lose the ability to plaster their false information in all of these hospitals across the nation. They don't want it to be wrong. They've built their careers on this. The doctors that testified in my case built their careers, their life's work on this misdiagnosis. And so for me, at the time, that's what we were up against. There was not enough people that were able to stand up to this agenda. And so that's what I feel like was the strongest, you know, problem in the case that ended up with me being wrongfully convicted.
Well, in my case, essentially it was a rush to judgment. I mean, when you see an 11-month little beautiful baby girl, I mean, for all intents and purposes, she was gone. She was dead, and she did have a bruise on her chest from compressions. They initially, in the autopsy cover sheet, stated that she had a bruise on her back. They didn't even look into whether or not she had a birthmark, which she did. She had a birthmark on her wrist and she had a birthmark on her back. They automatically classified that as a bruise. And later, because once I got the cover sheet and I looked at my public defender and told him, listen, no, she had a birthmark on her back and on the wrist. And once they got in contact with the hospital where she was born in Springfield, Illinois, they were able to get the medical records and prove that point. But then, then you started seeing them playing with the evidence, because they went out of their way to try to hold on to the story that there was a bruise on the back, and then came this claim about the back being broken, which it turned out that it was a tear in the cartilage of the 11th thorax of the vertebrae. Possibly happened as a result of life-saving measures or whatever, but they automatically just ran with a bunch of assumptions, and had this forensic pathologist, Dr. Nina Hollander, who not only fabricated evidence about the back injury and the bruise, so-called bruise on the back, but it turns out that she had a long history of fabricating injuries in other cases. As a matter of fact, in 1991, she was forced to resign from the Clark County coroner's office in Las Vegas. And a strange bit of coincidence, she ended up in King County in Seattle. She's deceased now. I mean, I don't mean to laugh. But and then we later found out that no, she had a track record dating back from the 70s when she was a deputy coroner in New Jersey and was forced to resign. Then ended up in Texas and was forced to resign. Then ended up in Clark County and forced to resign. And ended up in Kings County. I don't know what was the ultimate result of that, but yeah, that
Wow.
the X-rays regarding the back mysteriously disappeared.
Of
So
course
did
they
the
did, right?
yeah. So did the ones so did the one regarding the leg injury, the femur. There was an injury to the femur in, I think, late February of 1988, and that the X-rays, which reemerged in 2005, was pivotal in my legal team who came on to my case in 2012. Kerry Salmon, Karen Smith, and so on and so forth, out of Arizona, both the Tucson and Phoenix offices of the Capitol Habeas Unit out there. Once they came across the X-rays of the femur and had a radiologist, Dr. Barnes, and a pediatrician, and so on and so forth, looked at it, and you're like, no, that's signs. That's signs. That's the sign of scurvy, because not only were they able to look at that, they had evidence that when the actual leg injury happened, I was in LA. So there's no way in the world I could have been responsible being in LA. So once they started looking at that and other evidence, and looking at the rush to judgment by Dr. Nina Hollander, as well as the fact that she didn't do a differential diagnosis, which in any case where a child is suspected of being abused, that's what you're supposed to do. And had they done that, there's a good chance they would have came across the fact that she had this pre-existing condition of Barlow's disease, which is scurvy, which it turns out she actually had before her and her mother came to live with me.
Wow. In both of your cases, it really highlights that the term of like junk science and how much it really has been pivotal in incarcerating and convicting people who are innocent. And had this science, it's hard for a jury to hear, oh, this is a science, and like a jury who doesn't understand the medical field and actually how to prove something is going to think that the science is real and proves something. And for those on the call that don't know, this term junk science is essentially the term that is used to refer to the many theories that supposedly use science to prove something happened. And a big part of that is bite mark, blood spatter analysis, and all these other things that are unproven theories, but they are presented as scientific facts. And I'm wondering, like, how did you guys feel knowing that you were innocent and that there was this supposed scientific information and facts that you were just like, how does that even work? Like, I'm innocent. Why is there this science that is proving or supposedly proving otherwise? Were you guys frustrated, angry? I would wanna, I don't know. I just can't even imagine, like, you guys knew you were innocent and they were saying that there's science proof that you weren't.
Go ahead, bro. You want to go?
No, sis. No, I was referring to you.
You know, for me, because I just felt so young and naive at the time, that sitting through all of that, I felt like I was drowning in it. Like, there was no way anyone was going to hear me, because you've got doctor after doctor after doctor with all of these facts, right?
Right.
And, I just, you know, my attorney was in over their head. I was too naive and, you know, to understand, you know, what was happening. And so I went through that whole period kind of like in shock, like, there's nothing I can do to save myself and protect myself. And and now I understand you know, the fallacy. I understand that science is not absolute in a lot of ways. And so my anger is not so much more directed at, you know, a science that can evolve and change, and the people who are willing to evolve and change along with it. But it's the ones that continue to deny the fact that they were wrong. And and also it's, again, going back to the agenda, like this didn't just happen with you know, shaken baby. Like this system has been designed to oppress people. It started in Black communities way before, you know, someone like myself, have been affected. So that is where my anger is directed at now, is at this system that isn't working. It's failing everybody. So that way in the hospital, they're showing these videos of, you know, don't shake your baby, duh. But the medical staff are already conditioned to be suspicious of that, like right from the gate, by infiltrating everything with this false knowledge. How does anyone not have a bias or come at it in an objective way? Like they're being told, you have to show this to new parents because people are out there shaking their babies, you know? And so automatically, you're, as a new mom sitting in the hospital, that nurse is watching you. She's watching you, every single one of us. And that's not like, there's not that I'm not saying people don't need to have education, but the way that they're permeating everything with this false suspicion is hurting all of us in the long run.
Well, I ran the gambit. Anger, despair, rage, outrage. Initially, when I was arrested for my daughter's death, I spent the first 2 weeks on suicide watch in isolation, because I just virtually gave up, because I did pretty much blame myself for my daughter's death in so far as I did attempt to administer CPR and went horribly wrong. So I looked at that as a large contributing factor in my my daughter's demise. And all through from that point on, even when I came off suicide watch and was put in a regular unit, I was pretty much in a haze. I was pretty much a walking zombie through that whole process. And I probably didn't start coming out of that fog until midway during my first year on death row. And that's when the anger started to intensify, and I just started on this roller coaster, because especially in men's prison, and especially outside the state of Washington, because outside in Washington it's a little more relaxed within the system, but elsewhere, if you have a label as a baby killer, no, you're pretty much, you're not only an outcast. There's people who want to hurt you. There's people who literally want to kill you. I mean, during my preliminary hearing, while I was still in isolation, they brought me back from our preliminary hearing, and Metropolitan Police officer who brought me back from court in full restraint put me in a holding tank with about 10 to 15 other people who were unrestrained. Knew what the purpose was later, but I was so out of it, so much in the cloud fog, that at that moment it didn't even dawn on me that he was trying to set me up to be hurt or killed. And like I said, just dealing with that and this narrative of being a baby killer, a child abuser, and trying to go over, I mean, every instance of my interactions, especially that night with my daughter. And because you do have this, this information, this science ringing in your head. Oh, this injury, that injury, this bruise, so on and so forth. Like, how did this? And I almost got to the point where I was even questioning myself.
Wow.
Yeah, I almost got to the point like, did I black out, or did you know? And yeah, so it's difficult because you want to trust those who are in a position of authority, especially in the medical field, and who are presenting these facts as this evidence as fact, to do the right thing, but to find out that they have an agenda, especially in the case of Dr. Nina Hollander, and seeing the way that the judicial system doesn't work, malfunctions. It's just it's just disheartening, and it frustrates the hell out of you, and you go through this emotional roller coaster to the point that had it not just been for me just arriving at a point of I'm just going to fight regardless, whether I had hope or not. That was just, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out fighting, even if I never even have a real chance of getting regaining my freedom, or even getting off a death row. I'm going to go out fighting, and that just became my mindset and my focus.
Both of you guys, it seems like your strength and resiliency and tenacity to just continue fighting is really inspirational. I know that is incredibly, like, that is such an incredibly difficult thing to do. And we often hear people who just give up, and you know, it's really inspiring to hear you guys and your continued fight to prove your innocence. And even with you, Heidi, you continued appealing even when you were out of prison. And it's like you felt so passionate about proving your innocence because that was the truth. And yeah, you guys are just very inspirational. I know it takes an incredible person to have that strength that you guys did.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand it over to Elena to ask a question. I think she has some.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Haim. And I know you talked about the particular conditions being in a men's prison and being accused of the crimes that you were.
Right.
And on the other side of that coin, I kind of wanted to ask Heidi, I know that you experienced a lot of adversities while incarcerated that were particular to being a woman. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience being incarcerated as a woman and the particular challenges that you or other women that you were incarcerated faced, and any misconceptions that you'd like us to be aware of when we're working with women or representing women or have women as our clients who are facing incarceration.
Yeah, so I've heard, I feel like I had kind of maybe a unique experience. I've talked to other women exonerees like Amanda and Christine Bunch and other women in this community who had horrible, ridiculed experiences inside. And for whatever reason, I don't know if there was a higher power protecting me from that. I did not have to go through that. I remember my mom asking me, like, how are you going to do this? Like, how are you going to go in there and be around all of these criminals, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember like just having this like inner like peace about it, in the sense that I was like, Mom, they're still women. And like, I'm not going to go in there and say I'm innocent and I don't belong here, because all that's going to do is, one, I feel like I didn't want my innocence to be mocked. Like, it was mine. And then two, I felt like if I had any chance of making it in there, I needed to find common ground. I needed to connect with them. And in the midst of doing that, I can't go in there and say, I'm innocent and I don't belong here.
Mm.
And so I didn't do that. I went in there and I tried to find that common ground and connect with women. And again, in the midst of doing that, they started questioning me, like, why are you here? You shouldn't be here. And so, they knew obviously the charge, the conviction that brought me there, but they really, like, there were so many women who were like, no, something's not adding up. You should not be here. And so they actually were the ones that got me to start saying, I should not be here, and we got close, and I got to be a part of some really good organizations within the prison, women that were striving to build a better world for themselves, and for everyone else, that was in there. And these programs lent to a decrease in violence, and just brought education. We had no outside education other than vocational classes, and now we have the FEPS program, and all of that kind of was born out of these programs that I got to help found and be a part of. And so I just had this different experience in that sense, and I feel like I also was able to draw on a lot of their journeys in discovering like why they had committed the crimes that they did, and trying to overcome that and be better. In the beginning, when we would sit in these classes together or these like workshops, I felt like I didn't belong. Like I wanted to, though. Like I was like, these are my people, these are my tribe. Like, look at them like growing and developing, and like, what do I work on? And so it was a challenge for me. But in doing that and trying to figure out like where I can contribute within that community, I found, myself and my purpose, and it had nothing to do with the platform of being innocent. Like, it didn't matter that I wasn't supposed to be there. In those moments, I was right where I was supposed to be.
That's really good to hear. Just, one thing that the student chapter in particular has tried to express to people is that innocence isn't the only thing that we should be thinking about, because the whole system is damaged and the whole system is wrong. Like, and exactly what you said, Heidi, there's reasons why people do things, and oftentimes it's because they're, experiencing something that many people will never understand. I do want to like touch back on what you said about Amanda Knox, and for those that don't know, Heidi recently did a podcast with Amanda Knox, and she was a UW student actually who was studying abroad in Italy when she was accused and convicted of murdering her roommate. She spent 4 years in an Italian prison and was eventually acquitted. And while your experiences are factually different, it seems like you both really agreed when she said, thank goodness we're not inside right now. And I was wondering if you could talk more about that, and then if both of you guys can tell us a little bit more about what you think that your personal experiences inside can help us understand the situation of how dangerous it really is for people experiencing incarceration right now during COVID-19.
Yeah, so when the last year that I was in, I was actually diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. And if it had not been for like my family and friends advocating, holding the clinic responsible inside, I would not have, it's possible I would not have walked out of there. I had formed 2 blood clots from the port that they put in to administer chemotherapy. And the clinic they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't even
Mhm.
know that they were blood clots, but like my entire arm turned purple and veins were popping out everywhere. And I sat like that for like 3 weeks, and they just kept saying, "Oh, we don't know." And it was my best friend, who is an RN at one of the best hospitals down here. She had came up to see me, and when she left, she called my mom, and she was like, "Heidi has a blood clot."
Mm.
And so my mom started blowing up the clinic, and finally they did an ultrasound, and sure enough, I had one right next to my heart, and I had another one in my arm. And had my mom not called, had we not been fighting the way that we were, I mean, we all know what blood clots do to people. So there was also another woman who was diagnosed with the same thing at the same time that I was, and she did not survive. She passed away after I was released. And
Wow.
I just attribute that to the fact that she didn't have the same kind of family advocating happening from outside and holding the clinic responsible for the treatment that she needed to have. And so, but there's so many, I think what happens is that those doctors and those nurses that are inside the prison, it's almost like they become apathetic to
Yes.
the
Yes. Indifferent. Yes.
exactly. There's such a caseload, because the prisons are overflowed. Everybody has problems. And there's only so many of them. And of course, you've got the women that are battling and overcoming and struggling with the addictions they had on the street, and they're probably going in there and asking for more and whatever they can get. But like the staff is becoming apathetic.
Right.
And so even when it's something serious like cancer, they're just numb. It's just one more person bothering them in their day. And so that lends to, I think, a huge gap of care for people inside who are facing things like cancer or now the coronavirus. Like, they are looked at as subhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
they can sit there and say that they've been through the training that tells them that we're to be treated just as well as anyone else on the street, but that's not what's happening inside. We are a number, and we are subhuman.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. I mean, my experience, especially within the Nevada judicial system, the prison system, was that the healthcare there was substandard. I've seen individuals receive the wrong medication and died from it. I've seen situations where there was an individual on death row who had gangrene set in his leg, and that was from years of dealing with diabetes, and eventually it ended up coursing through his body, and he succumbed to that. It's been situations where they had to respond to a man down crisis, somebody basically losing consciousness or whatever in their cell, and they would be out there, the goon squad, COs, and so on and so forth, medical staff, for 30, 40 minutes to an hour, not even really giving this person any type of medical care, because they had to go through all these so-called security procedures to even open up the door to get to this individual. One particular case, the individual was trying to commit suicide and was successful because they took too damn long in responding to it. They were at his door as he was hanging there, and wouldn't go in there to save him because security protocol. Like I said, the medical care you receive and while you're incarcerated, and even more so when you're on death row, is substandard. They do look at you as subhuman. When you're on death row, it's like, why even bother?
Yeah.
They're going to be executed anyway.
Yeah. I mean, going off of that, you know, here in Washington especially, and I think all over the place, we're learning more and more about how many people have actually been sentenced and killed on death row who were then proven to be 100% innocent by DNA evidence. And the numbers are absolutely staggering when you think about, like, the state has literally killed people who never did anything wrong. And you were living that for 29 years, knowing that could potentially happen to you as you were on death row. And, you know, being an innocent person on death row, did you identify with the others that weren't wrongfully convicted maybe? And here in Washington, I feel like most of us all agree that or all believe that the death penalty and even life without the possibility of parole should not be sentences ever imposed. And would love to hear your thoughts on all of that.
There were some individuals that I did identify with. As a matter of fact, there were other individuals who were innocent like me. Matter of fact, one in particular name is Paul Lewis Browning. Paul Lewis Browning was released from death row last year in August. He was literally my next door neighbor as I left death row. And I gave him my TV. I literally set my TV in front of his door as I was going to the visitor room to sign the papers. Another individual by the name of Paul Lewis, by Jimmy Kirksey, who no longer has the death penalty, but I think he's facing the possibility of either getting a life sentence or something lesser. He's literally there for a fist fight, and the individual had a pre-existing condition of an aneurysm.
Wow.
And there are a few other individuals who may not have been totally or actually innocent of what they were accused of committing, but their crime didn't match the punishment. It didn't warrant them being, sent on sitting on death row, or even with a life sentence or anything like that. I mean, you had individuals who were released after serving 15 years on manslaughter cases. Eventually ended up being released and regaining their freedom. But yeah, but I mean, very few instances where I can say that I actually related to the majority of the individuals who were on death row with me, because given my circumstances, it's a situation where you're looked down upon by most people, even if they don't voice it to your face. You hear the whispers behind your back, baby killer, so on and so forth. And so pretty much I hung out with my, like my sister said, tribe, the individuals who I was close with, who knew the specifics of my case, and who were supportive of me as much as they could be, and pretty much did my own thing, got us involved in the law as much as possible, and that was pretty much my existence.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's not easy to think back to those moments. I guess maybe turning on a bit more positive note, I know you're wearing the shirt, Haim, Healing Justice.
Yes.
I heard Heidi talk about this and on the podcast, and also you as well. I'm wondering if you guys can tell us a little bit more about Healing Justice and how it started and what it means to you both. And for the audience, the link to learn more about Healing Justice is up on the Facebook event page as well. So, yeah, either one of you.
I'll defer to Sis because she was the one that got me involved with it to begin with. She's much more informed about Healing Justice than I am.
Nice shirt, though.
Yeah.
So I got involved with Healing Justice in 2016, and I've been serving on their advisory board as of late. I was on their exoneree advisory committee before that. So the best way to describe Healing Justice is that two women, the crime survivor of a crime that was committed that had ended up with the wrong man serving 11 years in prison. His name was Ronald Cotton. Came together with a woman who was an attorney in New York, I believe at the Innocence Project. Her mother had been convicted of a crime she did not commit, and so she had assisted in helping to get her, get her mom home. And these two women, and her name was Katie Monroe, and the crime survivor is Jennifer Thompson. These two women came together and started talking about and having a conversation that there is more than just one harm when it comes to a wrongful conviction. It's not just the person that was wrongfully convicted. It's not just their family. It's not just the crime survivor, and it's not just their family. It's these concentric circles that radiate out into society. And so their approach to Healing Justice was, how do we bring all of these concentric circles together? Because we've all been harmed by the same system. And so Healing Justice was kind of born out of that. They use a restorative justice method, which, if you're not familiar with restorative justice, it's kind of like, particularly like a circle setting where you have all of these players that have been harmed by a system, the criminal justice system, right? And the criminal justice system takes the main people who have either caused a harm or had a harm done to them. They have nothing to do with the system, the criminal system. That's like its own thing. It does its own thing, and it's failing everyone. But what restorative justice does is it puts those people back into the center of the process, back into control of figuring out how they move forward. And so when Jennifer and Katie took this model and they started applying it to people who have been harmed, whether it be exonerees and victims, crime survivors, their families of exonerees, people who attended these retreats walked away with way more healing and something way more solid to stand on than anything else that's being done out there for aftercare. And like Laura said, it's next level stuff that they're doing. And so it honestly has pulled me out of the depths of places I should not have been, in the PTSD that I have to live with every day. It's never going to go away. I have to live with it the rest of my life. But to be effective member of society, to be able to fulfill, the purpose and the goals that I have to bring awareness to this, I have to be healthy. I have to maintain my own sanity. And so Healing Justice does that for me. It does it the most comprehensive way that any organization out there, I think, can.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, and to me, I think it's essential, because one of the things I believe that's missing for, if not all of us, the majority of us who are making the transition from being wrongfully convicted and released into society, is aftercare. There is no real aftercare. And while can't necessarily look to an Innocence Project, or in my case, the federal capital habeas unit that helped me to get released, to provide that, because they have limited funds as it is. It is necessary for us to address that harm, because I remember when attending, well, not the very last one, because there's been others since then, but the one I went to for the first time, my first and only time in September, Jennifer had made this analogy between it being like a bomb going off in your life and shattering your life into millions of little pieces that you're struggling to trying to pull all those pieces back together, all those fragmented pieces back together, while at the same time having this harm consistently and continually being done to you while you're wrongfully convicted. And just her saying that was instrumental in helping me to come to the realization that I haven't even begun to address the effects of being wrongfully incarcerated and the harm that it had done to me. And I've been on that journey since then. I mean, it's been a struggle, but it's because of organizations like that it at least allowed for me to have a different perspective, a clearer perspective of the effects of being in prison and how long lasting they are, not only on my life, but my son is still dealing with it. I mean, it turned his life upside down, because he found out about me, his father, 2017 in October, and we saw each other physically for the first time, face to face, and that in December of that year. And everything that came out of it as a result of it, it turned his world upside down. And he's dealing with the wreckage of it.
There's just so many more people than just the person who's incarcerated end up suffering when the system does this. And I think Healing Justice and you guys are just framing that in such a great way, and really pointing out that this doesn't just hurt one person, this hurts the whole society and the whole, this hurts everyone.
Yeah.
I think Laura wanted to make a quick announcement about Jennifer, actually.
Yeah, I can't let the opportunity, can you guys hear me? I'm just making sure you can hear. Okay, good. I can't really let the opportunity slip to let you know that the Stand for Innocence benefit dinner that we have every year, that we were supposed to have at the beginning of this month that was canceled, Jennifer Thompson of Healing Justice will be our featured speaker. And I say featured instead of keynote, because she will be talking to Heidi and hopefully Haim, and kind of in a stage setting where it's more of a conversation, so you can really get a feel for, rather than a keynote speech at a dinner. I really think it's important that I think we have a responsibility as the Washington Innocence Project to really shine a light on what it means to try to generate justice. To try to achieve justice means a heck of a lot more than getting the innocent person out of prison. It's the essential first step that is so difficult. But I think it's irresponsible, frankly, for us to be going forward as if all we have to do is open the prison doors and then everything's going to be okay. The lives have been destroyed of the people who have been put in prison, not to mention their children. The victim and the original victim of the crimes have not gotten anything near justice, right? So we have to keep the conversation going, and it's painful and it's hard, but I really think that we should be a partnership with organizations like that, because we don't have the skill set, we don't have the life experience, we don't have the, the capacity to understand and sort of support people in that process. But someone in the position like Jennifer Thompson or Katie Monroe absolutely do. And so for my part, I want to make sure that as an organization, we're always talking about what real justice means, and it starts with exoneration. but it doesn't end there. And I am so touched by hearing Heidi and Haim talk about their experience. And I've been close with Jennifer Johnson for a very long time, because I've been in this world for a long time, and it's a struggle. And I just think it's, we can't have a competition among who is being hurt the most. We need to just acknowledge that this is an astoundingly painful experience that just exacerbates harm upon harm upon harm. So if we start to look at it more like that, we might get somewhere closer to healing. And I love that organization exists, and I love that you two have been a part of it. So we're happy to hold them up and help them out as much as we possibly can. So thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for wearing the shirt, Haim. Thanks for bringing it.
Boo, Heidi. Boo. You didn't wear your shirt.
Well, thank you so much for talking about that experience. And Laura, just to kind of build off of that, as a lot of law students are in the audience watching and just kind of learning about the best ways that we can center our clients' experience and just restore this harm that was done, what do you think is the number one area of advocacy most essential for the law students listening right now who are going into careers of social justice? And what advice would you have for future defense attorneys or future prosecutors to really understand from your experiences?
Oh boy, that's a great question, and one I wish I had about an hour to think about and then respond. But I think that understanding that, I think being an advocate it tends to put us in a sort of myopic view of the world. So you should be 100% zealously advocating for your position, whatever that might be. And I know that that's why prosecutors have a tendency to have that sort of hardline view that they do, and defenders have a look at it like, no matter what, this is the harm that happened here. I think having a really holistic and realistic view of the system that we're in has got to be the first step for everyone. Try not to fall into that the really sort of siloed and myopic view of the world that you will be tempted to slip into because you will be committed to any given role. If it were up to me, it would be like military service. I don't think you should be able to be a prosecutor unless you've spent a few years as a defense attorney, and vice versa. I think that if we have the experience of knowing what it was truly like to view the world through those different lenses, there would be a much greater understanding. So I get that that's unrealistic, and it's easy to talk a good talk, but I think that being humble and being aware that being a fierce advocate doesn't mean shutting off the humanity of anyone else in the process. And that means, it's sometimes if someone was misidentified, for example, in a wrongful conviction, we have this experience with some of our clients or our exonerees where it's easy for them to want to sort of demonize that person. And it's like, okay, that's totally understandable, but we have to understand that that person was also the victim of a crime, right? So it's such a challenge. It's such a hard thing to do, but to make sure that you're not getting siloed in the way that you're thinking as you start your law career is just critically important, because the fact is, everybody has a little bit of the truth. Nobody has all of it, right? And if the idea is to try to get to what's really happening and what the truth is, then we just have to stay open to that. And so, that would be my advice. I've got so many other things to say, but that's where I would say.
Heidi and Haim, what about you guys?
Yeah, exactly. She got me on fire here. We need, I think, as a society as a whole, we need to start trying to stop demonizing humans, period.
Right.
Because
Right.
what happens is us that are innocent, we're casualties of this unsustainable trajectory. Mass incarceration is not sustainable. We have to stop demonizing even people that commit their crimes.
Right.
And in that process, innocence people can have more of a foothold into hopefully never even having to be wrongfully incarcerated or wrongfully convicted. And that's a long journey. Like
Right.
it's going to take a really long time, because as I said before, this system was designed and built to be this way.
Right.
And so we can't restore it. It has to be dismantled and completely reconstructed. And we need to approach it. And I know I can't see them, but I know that, you know, there's law students out there that are prosecutors or interested in becoming prosecutors, interested in becoming, you know, public defenders or whatever other area of law. I'm looking at you right now. You guys are the next generation. And change, this narrative, this discussion has to continue with you.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that this system was built this way, and it's been carried on the backs of those that came before you. And now we have this new narrative, and it needs to continue. And so I just implore you to please do the education, you know, use your voice. And like Laura said, you know, this, look at it from both sides. Try
Exactly.
to both shoes and understand what has happened here and what's been happening for generations and decades.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, especially when Laura talked about I mean, myopia plays so much of a key role, especially when you're talking about district attorneys, because they are advocating for this person who they perceive as being the victim, and sometimes they become overzealous and become so blinded by their mission to advocate for this victim that they become blinded to the facts that are there. I mean, in my case in particular, when the evidence started pointing strongly towards my innocence, they started using it just instead of just saying, okay, we acknowledge that this evidence is valid, which is what they said on record. They went on to manufacture a ridiculous argument. Yeah, despite the fact he's procedurally barred from bringing up the new medical evidence because the 1996 anti-terrorist bill says that if you didn't bring it up within a certain timeline, you're procedurally barred. Yet the innocence, the actual innocence provision defeats that. They didn't care. They didn't care. So
Yeah.
it's that mindset is that mindset that I find just totally disruptive to the process in and of itself, and the vilification that my sister was talking about, that actually starts in the media from day one. For day one, and you're only getting this one-sided portrayal of the facts, and it's primarily coming from the district attorneys. And essentially, these cases are being tried in public through the media before they even reach trial. That's something that definitely needs to be addressed.
With that, if you guys have the opportunity, there's this new show on Netflix called Trial by Media.
I saw that.
I've already watched all the episodes. It's amazing. Highly recommend. And although those situations are not, you know, it just shows in specific situations, right? Like how much media has really changed the game and can lead to so many innocent people being incarcerated. I know we're running out of time, or a little bit over, but would just love to hear Heidi and Haim, if you guys have like one last thing that you want us to take away from this panel today before we close out. I'd love to hear that. And anything that you'd like us to remember as we leave.
Sis?
No, you're going first this time.
You would do that. I almost drawing a blank. To me, I think it's just important that we have more people like Laura, more people like Jackie, and of course, more people like Jennifer for the aftercare. advocating for change within the system, because as much as I agree with my sister that we need to just totally destroy the system and then restart it from the ground up, the likelihood that that's going to happen or happen anytime soon is slim to none. So unfortunately, change is going to have to happen incrementally, step by step, and hopefully we have people who are students watching who are really passionate about advocating for change and not developing that mindset of myopia where they can't look at things from all different sides and really be objective and use that objectivity when pursuing justice on either side, whether it's for the victim or for those who are being represented as defendants. And I would essentially just say, keep fighting, even if it looks hopeless as it did for me. Keep fighting.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I would just stress again that, the only way that we're going to have these instances is if, the system, and just a minute, daughter walked in. I lost my train of thought now. I just want to stress that, again, like the law students, the ball is in your guys' court. I would just ask that, it's very easy to take on the cloak and, champion for something, but you can only champion it effectively if you understand the other side as well. Just do that. In your education, question everything. I think that was the biggest thing that I even learned in all of this. Like, even like the first retreat that I went to, I felt completely overwhelmed and that I had nothing to contribute because I was surrounded by all of these Black men who had done like 20 to 30 years. And I'm thinking, what do I even have to contribute? Like they've been living this like their entire life, this oppression, and I'm nothing. Like what I went through was nothing compared to what they did. And thankfully that there was someone that, found me in that space and was like, absolutely, you have a platform. You are blonde hair, blue eyes, white woman, someone's daughter, sister, mother.
Looks like you.
They don't see you. And so, imagine I am you. This can happen to anybody.
That's right.
I have to jump in and say one quick thing. I don't want to take the last word because that was so much better of a last word. But I have to say, I just keep hearing all these references, which makes so much sense to like the media and what people are thinking. And Haim had such a great point about the perspective of the DA in his case and like how they look at things. We have 15 exonerations and 9 additional freed clients. Among all of those, there are 3 cases in which the prosecutor agrees that the person was actually innocent. I mean, 2.5 actually. Like even when it's a DNA exoneration, that acknowledgement is not there. And whether it's pure, myopic view or if it's a bias or if they're just saying it for whatever reason, that is very much there and present. And even our clients who do qualify for or should qualify for wrongful conviction compensation, the Attorney General's office, under one of the most progressive attorney generals in the country, they have to fight every single time and very often are not getting compensated. And so when I did have the opportunity to go and talk with them on a certain case about how their approach on these cases, what I learned is that every single person in the AG's office who works on these claims has a history as a DOC corrections person or a prosecutor. There's not a single person with the perspective that they've seen their clients as from a human perspective. It's just a bias. It's just an enormous bias. So what I need everyone to understand is that as frustrating as this is about what the perspective that appears to be out there, we've got to change this whole narrative. we do have to do that. And the two places where you can do it the most effectively is by calling out reporters when they say something that's incredibly biased. Write them a letter, write to the editors, say, we don't appreciate this bias. That is actually continuing a narrative that is old, you know, out of date, and it's like the Stone Ages. The other place where that narrative has to change is in the state legislatures. Because I am telling you, say every single day down there with my students for 7 years or 8 years, trying to get legislators to consider these really rational, completely reasonable changes. They don't know, they don't believe that wrongful convictions happen, or that the system really is any, you know, probably they did something if they didn't do that thing. That's very, very pervasive. But more importantly, even if they think that they believe it on a personal level, the belief among the political circles is that this is not a voter's issue. They think that people don't care. So that narrative in their head is not going to change unless they hear from constituents that that is not the way the world is anymore. And I am so thrilled for the next generation, because I have had the honor of teaching people for the last 10 years to know that you don't think this way, and yet all the people running the world right now think that you think this way. So the only way, honestly, the only way to do it is step up and speak out. You just have to challenge that narrative. And if more people are doing it, then the tide will change, but it's still an uphill battle for sure. So just say something. Call your legislators. That's my favorite thing, but you know, call me if you want advice, but you know, talk to them. Tell them what's up, because they don't know.
Thank you so much. This was just more than I think any of us could have asked for, and your time and the flexibility that each of you has, you know, given us in planning this event. And I just want to again say thank you so much. And for all the audience members, this has been recorded. I will be posting it up on YouTube and sharing the link. There's also links to everything that we kind of talked about today, the Amanda Knox podcast, Healing Justice, articles about both Heidi and Haim. They're all on the Facebook event page. Please, you know, go and learn more. And at the end of the day, being educated about the realities of what people face is the most critical part if we're going to be advocates in the future. And so with that, I just want to say thank you again, guys. And Elena, I don't know if you had anything else to say.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I just wanted to say to all of our participants out there, we have our board applications that are open until Monday. So if you all want to be involved in the Washington Innocence Project student chapter, we would welcome more applications until Monday so that you can be part of connecting with wonderful people like Heidi and Haim. So let's all put our hands together, and thank you guys so much for coming here today. We really, really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much,
Shepherd.
And I will text you, Heidi and Haim, once I get the video uploaded.
Already there.
Thank you.
Already. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Guys.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye.